how's it going? This is Tori, aka the fan account for Ian Gohan 1. Today I have something a little bit special for a 100 subscriber special. Today I will be doing a tier list for Ian's 8 Ways to Bully a Kid in Minecraft series. Someone suggested it under one of the videos. I'll put their comment on the screen, so shout out to whoever suggested that. I love any and all suggestions that y'all give me, because I do read every single comment. Because it's fun, interacting with you guys. So if you have any suggestions for more videos like this, where it's like me talking and me kind of interacting with Ian's content, feel free to list that in the comments below. Or, if you only want Ian's content, you don't want anything to do with me, that's totally fine too. I understand that. If you're like, ew, who are you? Go away. I totally get that. So, without further ado, let's get on into it. One thing I would like to address before sorting this tier list, as you can see, I have tiers S, A, B, C, D, and I would just like to emphasize that if I place any of these videos in C or D tier, that is not me saying that the videos are bad. It's just that I like the others better. Again, all of Ian's content is perfect and without flaw, so just wanted to get that out of the way. So without further ado, let's get into it. We'll be going in order here, starting at, obviously, episode 1, the OG. This very first ranking might upset a few of you, but I put it in D tier. And the only reason why I do that is because I feel like the very first 8 Ways to Bully episode was definitely when Ian and his friends were kind of starting to get a feel for just their content and, the kind of skits that they do. They were kind of like, getting used to their own skin, so to speak, as far as just doing skits on YouTube goes. They were all still very young, so personally this video didn't really give me any, laughs or giggles. Again, not to say it's bad, it's the OG, it's what started all of this goodness down here. So honestly, I don't have anything bad against this episode, but it was definitely just a starting point for the crew, and you can see that in just the acting and the ideas for the skits and just, the maturity of it as well, because I believe they were still in middle school when they made this video. And again, nothing wrong with that, but it's just not gonna be high up on the tier list for me personally. Next up, we have 8 Ways number 2. This is just second episode right here, and I put this one in C tier. So it had a couple little funny bits. Again, the crew is kind of starting to, feel themselves a little bit more and, really kind of get a feel for what they want to do for their skits and how they want to go about it. Again, still, not the funniest in the world, but again, it's not a bad thing. And again, this is also when we start to see Garrett for the first time in the skits, and personally I'm a huge fan of Garrett's acting. I know he would usually say some really unhinged things that would get the channel in trouble, but I always thought he was hilarious, as I'm sure many of you do as well. So next up we have episode 3. Now this one might come as a shock to some of you, but I put this one all the way up in A tier. Personally, I put this high up because Garrett's acting in this episode was hilariously phenomenal, just with, again, the whole Special Johnny persona. This is the first time we got to see Special Johnny, and just him as a character. And also, like, I have a personal connection with this video as well. I may be wrong, but it was either, because again, I don't really remember, but it was either episode 3 or episode 4 that was my very first episode of Ian's that I had seen ever. I don't remember which one was which, but I'm fairly certain it was number 3, and again, 8-year-old me thought it was the most hilarious thing in the entire world. Next up is number 4 in the series. Now this one, I put it in D tier only because I feel like a lot of the humor in this video in particular was kind of like, not really toilet humor, but just a little bit more immature. Especially the bit with, like, Special Johnny and Lokir. We already know what happened there. And also, I remember when I was a kid, at the time, I thought it was hilarious because I didn't know what sex was. So I showed this video to my mom, and she was like, "What the hell are you watching?" So I got in trouble. So yeah, I wasn't... back then, I was a fan of this video, but in modern times, not as much. Alright, next up we have 8 Ways Part 5, which is this episode here. 8 Ways Part 5, I put this in B tier, It's kind of middle in the pack of the sense that, you know, it's not the funniest video that they've ever made, but at the same time, it wasn't unfunny. It had a few good jokes in there that just got me to giggle a little bit. So that's where a lot of these are probably going to fall, is in B and C tier, with, you know, the few exceptions of, you know, A and S tier. Oh, and one more thing. S tier is my personal favorite episodes. So A tier is like just what I believe to be just phenomenally hilarious, and probably a lot of you think so as well, but S tier is like, even if not everyone else likes them, like S tier are just my personal favorites. Next up we have the Special Edition. This is when we really get to see more of Special Johnny. He really just steals the show in this episode, and that's why I put it in A tier. A lot of the jokes were, again, just really creative. Special Johnny as a character was a very just genius concept, at least I think it is. Even if it's so simple, it's just, you know, when you have a character that kind of has his shtick, which it might have been a little bit overdone, but again, it was funny in its own right. I mean, this was Minecraft in, you know, 2012 or 2011, so I don't think many of us cared if, you know, the acting was spot on or if the idea was, you know, like perfect. Alright, next up we have 8 Ways to Bully Desert Edition. On this one, I put in S tier. This is one of my favorite videos. I really enjoy the character that Garrett puts on. It wasn't even the Special Johnny character. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be anyway, at least I didn't think it was. That little accent that he put on, that little voice, for some reason, I always thought it was so funny. And just a lot of the skits that he's in, you know, with like Kyle and like the candy booth speaking Hajabijan, and then the one where he writes the love note to Kyle, but it's like super explicit. Just all the skits in this one are pretty well done, and again, Garrett really kind of sells the character for me, and I think that's why I enjoy it so much. Next up, we have Halloween Edition. This is episode 8, and this one I also put in S tier. Any time Ian has a video that has either bloopers, or just really good transition music, that usually just bumps up the tier for me personally. I really enjoy just like the transition music that he uses, like for the title cards of each skit in this video. I really enjoy the music. And then, again, anytime a video, like any of these videos, if they had bloopers, they like automatically move up on the tier list. Unless they were in D tier and I just didn't feel like moving them up. But yeah, the Halloween edition was just really funny. I love any of like the holiday themed videos that they do. I don't know why, but I've always been that way. Like any kind of, whenever a TV show has some kind of like, you know, Halloween or like Christmas themed episode, those have always been my favorite. And the Halloween edition, episode 8 specifically, there's 2 here. The first one, honestly, a lot of the skits were pretty creative and well thought out. I do like the one where Kyle's like asking for candy, you know, and Ian gives him potatoes. And then again, the bloopers for this video were exceptionally funny, so. Alright, next up we have 8 Ways to Bully Fan Edition. Now, the Fan Edition, I put it in C tier, and that's only because the comments that they picked for, you know, because again, I do love the fact that they interact with their fan base so much, and that they had this kind of video where it's like, okay, these skits are nothing but just what people in the comments have suggested, and I think that's really sweet. But the only thing about it is, obviously, you know, all of us were probably like, what, ages 10 through like 13 at the time, so all of our comments, it's going to be like a lot of toilet humor and stuff that's not super creative or really funny. And I, you know, so that's why I put this in C tier. It's not the worst video, like some of it's kind of goofy, but again, it's just, personally, I didn't see a lot of appeal in a lot of the jokes here. Alright, next up we have 8 Ways to Bully Christmas Edition. I put this one in B tier. I know I said before I usually like, you know, holiday themed, like Christmas ones and stuff, and this one, it was kind of middle of the road for me. Some of it was funny, some of it wasn't. Again, I do like a lot of, you know, just Kyle's acting in this one, and, you know, Garrett's acting, of course. I think like the skit where they have, you know, the little feast or whatever at the long hall, and like Garrett yells at Kyle to get off the table, like that part was kind of funny, but like that's kind of it. Alright, next up we have 8 Ways to Bully End Edition. Now this one I put in C tier because it was really creative. I do like like this is around the time, aside from like the holiday ones, like they started doing like the themed videos where it's like, oh, this is going to be in the Nether or this is going to be in the end. Um, and the concept of those is really, really cool, but I feel like just some of the skits, like it comes down to, whether it's funny or not is if, they're having fun making the skit and if it's just executed well or not. And I feel like in this one, they just like, I don't know, it's kind of middle of the pack for me. It's okay, it's just not the best. Alright, next up we have 8 Ways to Bully Valentine's Edition. And this one is also in C tier for me. It did have some pretty funny bits, like I do like the one skit where Kyle and Sean go into like the little tunnel of love and like, kiss each other or whatever. Or no, like Sean ends up kissing a pig. But other than that, there wasn't really anything that stuck out to me in this episode. And that's why I put it in C tier. Next is 8 Ways to Bully Birthday Edition. This one I put in B tier because again, any of the videos that have Sean in them and like Sean's really kind of, just let loose and he just kind of does his own thing, I do really enjoy those. And I do like the bit where he turns into a chicken after eating the birthday cake. That was pretty good. His chicken impression was like godlike in that episode. So that's why I put it in B tier. It's kind of middle of the pack. Like some of the skits weren't as funny. That's why it's not in A or S tier. Next is 8 Ways Easter Edition, episode 14. This one I put in A tier. A because again, it has bloopers. I love bloopers from the 8 Ways. Just kind of shows that like again, they're just being human. They're being, teenagers. They're being stupid, and that's what makes a lot of these videos really fun. And a lot of like what I like to see in a lot of the videos is if you can tell like everyone is actually having fun recording. When there's like a lot more like spontaneity in the video. Like here in this episode in particular, like Sean and Kyle go off on several tangents during several of the skits, and you can tell Ian is trying desperately to like get them back on track to get them to actually act out the skit. And like, and you would think like, oh, that's so disruptive, but like it's actually just really, really funny. And I hope some of you agree. Just because like, again, it feels less forced when it's like that, when they're actually just screwing around and having a good time. Alright, next we have Jungle Edition. I also put this one in A tier. This is when we also start to see a couple new characters in the 8 Ways to Bully series. I think this is the first time we see Nick, if I'm not mistaken. And if I am, you can roast me in the comments. But I do like when they start introducing more of the crew and it's not just, Ian and Kyle and Zach or Garrett, like if it's not just those four, if they kind of bring in the other members of the crew, I like to see that in videos just because it kind of adds variety. But yeah, the Jungle Edition in general is just pretty funny. I do like, the whole bit with the Kyle's potato named Platypus, or no, it wasn't a potato, it was a mushroom. I think that was also in Ian's, like one of Ian's favorite skits that he shared in his 100,000 subscribers special. So yeah, there are some pretty good ones in this one, that's why it's in A tier. Right, next we have 8 Ways to Bully Summer Edition. This one I put in B tier. It did have some pretty funny skits, but it's kind of like, again, middle of the road. Not all of it was funny, but some of it really was. I do like, I don't know why this is so random, but it's like the part where Kyle like runs up to the girl, he's trying to like, kind of get his way with her, and he's like, did you poop out a goose because your butthole is loose? Like, just the stuff like that Kyle comes up with on the fly. Like, I honestly don't understand how he does it, but stuff like that just always kills me every single time. Alright, next we have 8 Ways to Bully Nether Edition. Now this one I put in D tier. And quick, like, disclaimer slash spoiler, these are going to be the only three that are going to be in D tier. Alright, so everything from here on out, it's going to be at least C tier. So you guys don't have to worry anymore. I'm not a hater, I promise. I do have a very clear explanation for why I put the Nether Edition in D tier. So I put it in this tier because I feel like a lot of the skits in this episode in particular felt really forced. And that might just be the vibe that only I am getting from this episode, but to me it felt like no one was really feeling it in this episode. I felt like no one really wanted to record, and that kind of showed in just the acting and just the way a lot of the skits were executed. And again, that's the only reason why I put it in D tier. It just didn't feel like they were having fun. And if they're not having fun, then the video's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun to watch. And I feel like that's not a super crazy thing to say. Right, next up we have 8 Ways to Bully Classic Edition. Now this one I put in B tier. Again, I do really like the transition music that Ian uses in this episode, and I do like some of the skits that were in it. Nothing really stuck out to me, at least that I can think of off the top of my head, but again, it was still funny, and that's why I put it in B tier. Next we have 8 Ways School Edition. Now this one might surprise a couple of you, but I put it in S tier. This is one of my favorites. Kyle quits recording, I think like 2 skits into the video, and Ian puts like a disclaimer just explaining that. And from that point on, it's kind of him and Sean kind of bullying Nick, or, you know, him and Nick bullying Sean. But despite the fact that Kyle leaves, the video still carries on. Like, I'm not saying that it was good without Kyle, but the fact that it was like still able to be a great video without him, I think is really special, because like again, Kyle was kind of the face of the channel for a really long time. I mean, he's in almost every single one of the thumbnails here, but despite the fact that he left, they still managed to pull off a really funny episode, especially with Sean like putting on his little teacher accent, just sounding like, you know, just a really obnoxious female. Like when he would put on that accent, it just, oh my god, it made me laugh so hard. And again, like just Sean was so unbelievably obnoxious with his acting in this one. That's why I love it so much. And Nick was pretty good too, especially in the skit where, you know, they're in the library and Nick just starts, you know, like screaming like, "What's a library?" Like, this one just makes me laugh for so many reasons. And again, like Nick and Sean just really, really stole the show in this episode. And I appreciate them for that. Next up is 8 Ways to Bully Castle Edition. I put this one in B tier. Originally, I had it in C tier because a lot of the skits didn't really stick out to me, but I moved it up to B tier because I think that the map they used for this episode was really, really cool. I love it when they use, like, you know, just custom-made maps or whatever. Maybe not custom-made, but still just, like, something to kind of spice it up a little bit rather than just them playing in just a regular world that they've built a few things in. And again, I also love that Ian put the link to that map down in the description. That was really cool of him. But yeah, so that's why I put it in B tier. It's kind of, again, middle of the pack. Not all the skits were super funny to me, but some of them at the same time really were. I think there was, yeah, like the one with Nate, like, or I think it was Nick just speaking like to Ian, and you know, Ian's like putting the translations at the bottom. Stuff like that is really, really funny. Alright, next up is 8 Ways to Bully Halloween Edition. Now, this is the second Halloween edition that they've done, and that one is episode 21. This one I put in C tier. I feel like it's not as good as the first one they did, mainly because like a lot of just the jokes and kind of ideas that they had for the original Halloween one were kind of like already used, if that makes sense. So it just wasn't like as creative or original, if that makes sense. Still a little bit funny, and again, I do love the whole Halloween theme, but nothing really stuck out to me. And next we have 8 Ways Pirate Edition. I put this one in B tier. I like the Pirate Edition because it's just, again, you can kind of tell they were having a little bit of fun with it, you know, putting on the whole like pirate persona. That stuff like that's really fun to me. Right, next is 8 Ways to Bully Christmas Edition. This is the second one they did, so this is episode 23. I put this one in S tier, and I'm gonna move it to the front. Like now in the rows, I'm not gonna sort any of these, but it, like just for this one in particular, I want to emphasize this is my favorite like 8 Ways to Bully episode that they have done. Like my number one favorite is this Christmas one. Literally every single skit was done so unbelievably well, and again, just Kyle's acting and improvisation. I loved the skit with the Coca-Cola truck. They had bloopers in this video. The Christmas music was just spot on. Just everything about this video was absolutely flawless, at least in my opinion. I too love the bit where, you know, like Nick is Santa and he tells Kyle, or he gives Kyle the gift of puberty. I love when they take Kyle to the Polar Express and Kyle improvises the noise of the train. That, like, I quote that and my friends are like, "Are you autistic?" Like this is the kind of video that I would show to my friends who have never seen Ian's stuff before, because I know that even though it's like super niche content, they'll probably find this video funny to some degree. That's how good this video is. Alright, next up we have 8 Ways, part 24. This one I put in A tier. Again, this kind of also had that feel where the guys were just having fun recording it. I don't care about like the skits that they come up with or like the theme or anything like that. But if you can tell that they're having fun recording and just kind of improvising a lot more and just saying silly things just for the fun of it, like that's what honestly makes a video good, in my opinion. So that's why part 24, even though there's nothing super special about it, like you can just tell in this video that they were really let loose and they were having a lot of fun. Right, next up we have 8 Ways Magic Edition. I also put this one in A tier because I love the fact that Sean was messing with his voice like modulator, or not modulator, voice modifier, whatever thing, so much in this episode. It just made it so ridiculously funny. Especially when he got like turned into a robot and he did you know what for money. I don't need to explain it. If y'all know what I'm talking about, y'all know what I'm talking about. But just all of that just in this video, I always thought it was so funny. Again, Sean stole the show in this episode. Alright, next up is 8 Ways Easter Edition. This is the second one they did. This is part 26. I also put this one in S tier. Again, I do love Sean's acting in this episode. It's spot on, as always. Well, maybe not as always, but still, it was just really, really funny in this one. And I do like that they brought in Nate. I like when Kyle did like his little, Easter Bunny call or whatever, and then Nate showed up and did you know what to Kyle. I'm not gonna say it, but y'all know what I'm talking about. I do also love the bit where Sean, like, is giving, like, his little sermon at, like, for a little Easter service, and he starts describing Jesus as a Mexican. Like, Ian addresses that in the bloopers, but, like, regardless, even if it was, like, horribly racist, it was still so unbelievably funny. So shout out to Sean for just literally coming up with the most unhinged things to probably ruin Ian's monetization, but still just make the videos really fun and enjoyable. Alright, next up we have 8 Ways to Bully Summer Edition. This is episode 27. I put this one in C tier just because I feel like this one was just the slightest bit boring as far as like just the skits that they did. Again, it was a pretty enjoyable episode, but just not as good as the rest on this list. And next up we have 8 Ways to Bully part 28. This one is gonna go in C tier as well. Again, nothing really special stuck out in this video, and the same thing goes for part 29. However, I do love the thumbnail that they did for this episode here. But just nothing like really, stuck out to me in these episodes. And so that's why they're, not the best, but at the same time they're not bad. I want to emphasize that. I make it sound worse than it is, but none of these episodes are bad. Right, next up is 8 Ways Future Edition. This one I put in A tier. This one, Kyle and Sean especially, again, like I've said before, they really let loose in this episode, and that's why it made it so fun. Especially, with just Sean saying just the things that he would say. And I do like the bit where they like jump into the pit of like, man-eating cows or whatever, and Ian puts in text on the screen like, I just told them to, act like this or whatever. And so it's literally just Sean and Kyle running around just saying words, and like it's so like awful, but it's so funny at the same time. Right, next up we have 8 Ways part 31. Same thing with part 28 and 29 here, just kind of nothing really stuck out to me with these episodes, and I mean, I feel like that's something that's kind of unavoidable for a series that's gone on this long, is you kind of start to run out of ideas because, despite Minecraft being like, just the unlimited kind of sandbox game that it is, it's still somewhat limited in the things you can come up with. And plus, especially when you don't have anyone new coming in with fresh ideas to kind of liven things up a little bit, I don't blame them for just, not necessarily running out of content, but just, slightly running out of ideas just as the series goes on. Right, next we have 8 Ways to Bully Pickaxe Edition. Now, originally I had this in, like, I think B or C tier, because I personally didn't really see the appeal in the whole, pickaxe jokes. But upon watching it with a friend of mine, I began to appreciate just how funny it really is. especially when just Kyle and Sean just start screaming into their mics and it's just an absolute mess. So that's why I put the A Ways to Bully pickaxe edition in the A tier. And I apologize for how horrible that little pickaxe impression was. I'm trying my best. Alright, and then we have A Ways to Bully Twitch edition. I put this one in C tier just because I do love the concept. However, when this video came out, I didn't watch Twitch at the time. So when watching it, I didn't really understand a lot of the jokes. And back when I watched them again more recently, you know, after I've been on Twitch for a little while, and when I say on Twitch, I mean like just watching other YouTubers and creators. I'm not a Twitch streamer. um, Twitch edition just didn't really pique my interest. I feel like they could have done a lot more with some of the ideas that they had, but again, it just some of the acting just kind of fell just a little bit short. And last but not least, as we are starting to wrap up this episode, or this video, I should say, we have the very last episode of the series, 8 Ways to Bully Remastered. So this is when they recreated their very first episode. I put this in B tier because, like, again, it's not gonna be all that funny because the original wasn't that funny. However, I do love the fact that they went back and kind of brought back those skits that they did all those years ago and recreated them. You could tell how different they all sound, how different they all act. And I think that it was just really cute and heartwarming to see. Like just in general. I love it when they do callbacks like that. I mean, especially like nowadays, you know, when we don't really see much of their content anymore. But it's still a pleasure to just kind of revisit the classics. Alright, and that is it for my tier maker episode. I hope you all let me know what you think, just either with my opinions or just, you know, any ideas you have for future videos like this in the future. Or, you know, again, if you want nothing to do with me and you never want to hear my voice again, do let me know. Um, but either way, I had fun making this, and I also will have the link to this tier list in the description. So if any of you would like to make your own tier list with Ian's videos, you are more than welcome to do so. And yeah, as ever, thank you all so much for the love and support you've given the channel. I love interacting with all of you, and just kind of reminiscing over Ian's content. I know it's like such a niche, like little group, but it's still just a pleasure to be a part of. So yeah, I hope you all have a good one, and I will hopefully interact with you all in the comments below. See you guys. Copyright. I'm not actually Ian.